everybody. Thank you for joining this presentation. My name is Diana Pelayo. I'm co-director of the Cancer Legal Resource Center. And today I'll be presenting on disability insurance and financial assistance. As a general disclaimer, the information provided during today's presentation is general legal information, and it is not legal advice, nor a substitute for legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Okay, before we get started, I'd like to give a brief introduction to my organization. The Cancer Legal Resource Center is a program of Disability Rights Legal Center. We are based in Los Angeles, California, but we provide our services nationwide. The CLRC operates under the educational model, which means we do not provide legal advice or direct representation. Rather, our goal is to provide information and resources on cancer-related legal issues to anyone affected by cancer. Our services are confidential. We have resources in English and Spanish, and we also have a language line interpreting services for additional languages. One of the ways we provide our services is through our free telephone assistance line. You can submit an online intake at the website here on the page, or you can leave us a phone message to have someone call you back and help you fill out an intake over the phone. We also have many fact sheets on a variety of cancer-related legal issues on our website, including a resource called our Patient Legal Handbook. The handbook provides a brief overview of some of the most common issues and questions that people living with cancer and their families have. This is available for free download on our website, and we also provide bulk physical orders. And lastly, we conduct presentations throughout the year. All right, so a quick overview of today's presentation. We'll start with disability insurance programs and other income replacement options. And for part two, I'll talk generally about financial assistance programs. Okay, so we'll start talking about some income replacement options and programs that include either state short-term disability insurance, private plans, and federal long-term insurance. As a brief introduction to disability insurance, it's generally an insurance policy that pays a portion of your income in the event of a temporary or permanent disability that prevents the worker from working. Very few states offer state disability insurance. California does, so I'll talk about the program in more detail. Private disability insurance is a policy that can be provided by an employer as an employee benefit, or an insurance policy that can be purchased by an individual directly through a company or through a professional organization. And then lastly, federal long-term insurance are programs like SSDI and SSI. Okay, so before we dive into disability insurance, I wanted to mention unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits are available for those who paid into the system, generally through payroll deductions. If someone was terminated from their job, this may be an option. The caveat to this is that part of being eligible for UI benefits, unemployment benefits, is that you are able and willing to work. If someone isn't able to work because of a medical condition, then there might be another program, such as state disability insurance, that could be an option. All right, so let's start with these two California state programs that offer short-term income replacement for different groups. So it's broken down into state disability insurance and then paid family leave. So again, California is one of the few states that offers both state disability insurance and paid family leave. So let's start with SDI. So SDI can typically replace about 60% of income. Similar to unemployment insurance, it's a payroll deduction. The amount someone is entitled to is calculated by a set reporting period. These two programs are managed by the California Employment Development Department, or EDD, and they have more information on how exactly it is calculated. However, it's important to note that SDI has a max length of 52 weeks. This does not mean that someone is entitled to 52 weeks, but rather it means that it's possible to receive up to 52 weeks, depending on the work period that's calculated as that base period. So if someone did not work enough prior to taking SDI, they may not have contributed enough to fund the full 52 weeks. Again, as I mentioned, California is one of the few states that offers paid family leave. So in California, it provides, again, a partial wage replacement to employees who need to take time off from work to care for a seriously ill family member. And that has its own classifications, but it can include a child, a parent, grandparent, sibling, spouse. or to take time off to bond with a new child entering the family. And that could be through birth, adoption, or foster care placement. These benefits can be received, paid family leave benefits can be received up to 8 weeks. Prior to July 1st of 2020, it was up to 6 weeks. So paid family leave is a similar income replacement for someone to care for the family member or loved ones. And I want to stress that a worker cannot take paid family leave for themselves. Rather, they might want to look at SDI. Paid family leave is solely for caregiving. And again, both of these programs are administered by the California EDD. So next, I want to go into SDI in a bit more detail. Okay, so as I mentioned, SDI provides short-term cash benefits to eligible workers in the state of California. It's funded again through payroll taxes, but what are the requirements for SDI? So first, in order to be considered disabled under SDI, someone must have a mental or physical illness or injury that prevents them from doing their regular and customary work for at least 8 days in a row, so 8 calendar days. Next, there's a time limit to file a claim. And then there's also that earnings requirement to file a claim for SDI and, excuse me, and also for opening a claim. And then there's usually medical documentation needed to certify someone's disability and inability to work. Another thing to note about SDI is that it does not provide job protection or return to work rights. So essentially, however, job protection may be provided if someone is covered under a job protected leave, like the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, or the California state equivalent, which is the California Family Rights Act, CIFRA. And it's also possible for someone to qualify for benefits even if they've started a new job but had previously worked long enough, because there's no specific time you must be at a job before qualifying for SDI. Again, eligibility is based on how much money someone earned during that base period before the claim starts. So in summary, it's important again to remember that SDI benefits do not guarantee job protection. And another thing to note, and why I brought up unemployment, is that you cannot receive unemployment and SDI at the same time. And that's because they have conflicting principles. For unemployment, you must be willing to work. For SDI, it's showing that you're unable to work. So a couple things to consider. We get that question a couple times about whether you can receive both benefits, and that's not the case. All right, so next is private disability insurance. And as I mentioned, these plans can be purchased independently or offered as a benefit from an employer. Private disability insurance provides employees who are unable to work due to a disability with partial income replacement. The amount varies per plan, but it is usually around 60% of someone's salary. Plans also vary, so if someone has or is interested in disability insurance, it's important to read the terms of the policy carefully to understand when benefits are payable and under what conditions. It is also particularly important to know how the insurance policy defines disability. Again, the policy will determine the percent of income received, the duration of these benefits, and any possible extensions of the benefit or transition from, say, a short-term to a long-term disability plan. Another thing that comes up with private disability insurance is that the plan might require someone to take an offset and apply for a public disability program like Social Security, in addition to getting income from the policy. If someone receives SSDI benefits, then typically the private insurance benefits will be offset by the amount of the SSDI benefits. This means that someone will still get the same percentage of the salary that's based on the plan, but from different sources. So be both from SDI and from the private plan. It does not mean that the person will get more benefits. It's just the offset is, the amount offset is by that public program. Okay, so now we can move into federal disability insurance. So the Social Security Administration has 2 long-term benefit programs. They each use the same definition of disability and both provide wage replacements if someone is unable to work due to a disability. They do not provide job protection or the right to take time off work, and these 2 programs look at different criteria to determine eligibility. Sometimes folks ask if they can apply for both SSI and SSDI, and typically an application will automatically apply a person for both SSI and SSDI. If they're eligible for both, they might receive SSI for the first 5 months of the disability and then switch over to SSDI once their waiting period has ended. If someone's SSDI benefit is low enough, they may be eligible to receive both benefits at once. Okay, so what are the similarities between SSDI and SSI? Well, it's how disability is defined. So SSA's definition of an adult with a disability is someone who is an inability to engage in a substantial gainful activity due to a physical or mental impairment that's expected to last at least 1 year or result in death. So what is considered substantial gainful activity? Well, it's generally a person who is working and earning more than a certain monthly amount. And that amount changes yearly. But the amount for 2020 is approximately $1,260 per month. Okay, so who is eligible for SSDI? Well, if someone meets SSA's definition of disability, they also need to have worked and paid into Social Security for a certain amount of time to be eligible. If they have not paid into Social Security at their job, they may not be eligible for benefits. Generally, someone must meet 2 different earnings tests. So a recent work test based on the age at the time the person became disabled, and a durational work test to show that they worked long enough under Social Security. Monthly disability benefits will be based on average lifetime earnings. So how long will it take to have an application processed? It can take about 3 to 5 months. However, if someone has a condition on the compassionate allowance list, the approval process can be quicker. And I'll talk about that more in a few slides. So again, I skipped one point, but essentially because this is a program that looks at earnings tests, work history and earnings, it will not consider income and assets. All right, so for SSDI, next there is a 5-month waiting period. This means that once someone is approved, they will start receiving their first SSDI check in the 6th full month after the date their disability began. So this is a waiting period that is fixed into SSDI, but because applications can take a while, and not everybody applies immediately after having a disability, retroactive payments may be possible up to generally up to about 12 months. And then lastly, if someone receives SSDI for 24 months or more, that may result in eligibility for Medicare. Okay, so what is SSI? So SSI offers monthly benefits to people with limited income and resources who are disabled, blind, and other criteria. Again, eligibility will be based on financial needs, so it will consider income and assets. In contrast to SSDI, benefits tend to be available generally a month after applying. And then some states also supplement SSI benefits, and then some states link receiving SSI benefits to having a category of link it to being eligible for Medicaid. So that in that sense, it may result in eligibility for Medicaid in some states. And then what is limited income and limited resources? Well, there's a list of things that count for SSI. It could be money earned from work. It can be money from other sources, food, shelter, and then resources can include, again, other items such as cash, bank accounts, personal property. There's usually a couple things that are exempt that don't count towards the resource limit, usually say a car or a house. But again, that's gonna vary by state. Okay, so I mentioned the Compassionate Allowance program, and I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about that. So the program is essentially a way of quickly identifying medical conditions that are presumptively eligible for Social Security benefits. And it's based on objective information, right? So it's a list of medical conditions that by definition meet SSA standards for disabilities. It primarily includes cancers, adult brain disorders, rare disorders for children. The same rules are used to evaluate conditions on the Compassionate Allowance list for SSDI and SSI. So if a condition falls on the Compassionate Allowance list, it can be helpful to make it clear on the application. An application may then be reviewed sooner if it qualifies for Compassionate Allowance review. However, it's not a guarantee of approval, and having a condition on the Compassionate Allowance list will not avoid that 5-month waiting period for SSDI. And SSA has a list of the conditions that fall under Compassionate Allowance list on their website. All right, so I also wanted to talk about appeals. Many people apply for benefits through SSA, and unfortunately, a fair amount of initial applications are not approved. However, there is an approval rate increase after appealing. So rather than reapplying after being denied for SSA benefits, an appeal can be a helpful option because it could result in the possibility of having these retroactive payments. Right, so reapplying instead of appealing can result in that loss. So appealing might be a way of ensuring the possibility of retroactive payments or back pay. So the SSA has multiple appeal process levels. So, and there are very specific deadlines to appeal SSA's decisions. So it's important to pay attention to any paperwork, any denial paperwork, and any timelines put in that letter. And then in some cases, hiring an attorney to assist with an application or an appeal can be helpful. There is a statutory cap on how much an attorney can take out of the fees, and usually it's a back pay fee. So usually what this means is that an attorney can't take more than that for helping somebody with an appeal. And for folks looking for assistance and filing an appeal, there are a couple organizations that help with SSA appeals, and legal aids may also be able to help for those who are eligible for their services. Okay, and I also wanted to mention a return to work option. So while many people need SSDI benefits for the rest of their lives, some people recover enough to return to work. And ultimately, SSA would like people to re-enter the workforce if it's possible. So there are a couple programs or incentives to make that transition easier. So one of this is a trial work period under SSDI. And a trial work period is a time span during which a person receiving SSDI benefits may test their ability to work while still being considered disabled under SSDI and receiving benefits. So during this period, the beneficiary will still receive their typical SSDI benefits, regardless of how much they're earning in payment for the work. Now, this period lasts 9 months within a 60-month period, and those 9 months don't necessarily have to be consecutive. So if someone stopped receiving benefits because they went back to work, this also won't necessarily mean they won't be eligible for SSDI benefits again. But if someone, in that case, if someone's disability prevents them from working again, they may ask SSA to restart their benefits. Usually, if this is within 5 years of when the benefit stops, the beneficiary may not have to file a new application. It could be an expedited reinstatement. So again, this is an option for someone who is interested in testing their ability to go back to work. And there are certain limits. I also wanted to note that there's a different process for SSI. Okay, so a quick summary on SSA benefits and information to consider. So again, the SSA is in charge of two programs, benefit programs. There's SSDI and SSI. They have the same definition of disability, but SSI eligibility is based on assets and income, and SSDI eligibility is based on work history, right? Then SSA also has what's called the Blue Book. It's a list of conditions that SSA has already determined are likely to affect a person's ability to work. It's a good source to look at the types of information that can be included in an SSDI or SSI application. And the more someone focuses on those conditions, it can help make the application, it can help with the application. Again, it can also help discussing with a healthcare provider or doctor about applying. They may have familiarity with what SSA looks for and make sure that the notes are reflected accurately in medical conditions or in any records. Next is listing multiple conditions. If a person has multiple things contributing to their inability to work beyond cancer, such as fatigue or nausea, it can help to include those in an application. And then lastly, again, the Compassionate Allowances Program for a quicker review could be an option for someone, and that can allow for a review in a few days as opposed to months. And of course, if there's a denial, an appeal might be an option as retroactive payments may be available, depending on the person's circumstance. All right, so next I'll talk about financial assistance programs. So the CRC does not provide direct financial assistance, but there are a number of organizations providing financial assistance programs and resources. We also have on our website 2 handouts on financial assistance and prescription assistance with the list of orgs and resources. These handouts can be a starting point to find out additional information. If someone has questions about eligibility for those programs, it can be helpful to contact that agency or to get more detailed information. Okay, so I'll start with financial assistance for healthcare costs. So first, some programs provide payment assistance for health insurance premiums or copays. And many of these programs are either diagnosis or cancer specific. It can also help to think of diagnosis in broadly speaking. So for example, head or neck or brain cancer, when searching for those programs, I know some folks have very specific diagnoses, which might make it a little bit difficult to search for programs, but thinking of a broader can be a good way to start. The other thing to consider is that for these type of financial assistance programs, the demand is usually higher than the funds available. So it's possible that any assistance received may be partial assistance so that the organizations can help more people. So that's something to keep in mind, but there are organizations that can help with health insurance premiums or copays to help with healthcare costs. All right, and then other programs that can help with healthcare costs are prescription drug assistance programs. And these can be helpful for folks whose plan coverage is not covering as much of the cost as they would like, or if their plan does not cover the prescription that they're interested in. So I want to talk about 2 possible options. So first is a prescription assistance program. They provide financial aid to people who are uninsured or have low income or other qualifications by helping them pay copays or coinsurance. Each of these programs has its own set of eligibility requirements, and many offer different benefits. As I mentioned, we have a list of prescription assistant resources on our website for anybody who wanted to dive a little deeper into what programs are available. And then next are pharmaceutical assistance programs. So some states may offer these programs that assist low-income seniors and adults with disabilities in paying for the prescription drug coverages. This type of coverage is going to vary by state. Some programs generally provide help in paying costs for, say, parts that aren't covered by Medicare Part D if someone's receiving a Medicare. Again, if someone needs help paying for prescription, they would see if their state offers this program and to what extent. So again, it's important to check with the state about eligibility and program limits. There are also other financial assistance programs that are not related to healthcare. I'm putting a couple here because it really depends on the circumstance. So first, you can think of utility assistance. So there are low-income energy assistance programs that can help pay utilities, weatherization, other energy-related repairs. And that program, the low-income energy assistance program, is a federally funded but state-run program that assists family with these bills. And next, there is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. In California, it's also known as CalFresh. And that provides food assistance for low-income individuals and families. The next assistance could be either through a local county office of social services for programs like cash assistance, adult services, and more. Again, it can be helpful to check by the county to see what the benefits might be available. And there are other programs that will depend again on availability, but there could be resources at local shelters, local churches, or religious-based assistance program, which many do not require that the recipient be of a certain denomination or belief. There are also food banks, and there could also be, in certain states, specific financial assistance programs based on certain cancer diagnoses or cancer specific. So it's also important to check and to look into. All right, and I like to end with some resources. So below you'll see information for SSA, including a link to the Compassionate Allowances tab. I'm also including information for the California EDD for questions about California SDI and paid family leave. And then lastly, there's information for California's Department of Insurance for consumer information on disability insurance. Okay, if anyone has any questions about today's presentation or about a specific situation, please feel free to fill out an intake with us at our website below. And that's it for our presentation. Thank you all for your time and attention.